Ever feel like some things from your childhood just kind of stick with you, like they become a part of who you are, for better, for worse?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that explores just that, the wounded inner child.
It's amazing how much those early experiences can shape us, isn't it?
Totally. And to guide our exploration today, we're turning to an excerpt from the Spanish audiobook, Cómo sanar a tu niño interior herido.
Which translates to,
How to Heal Your Wounded Inner Child. For those of us who didn't ace high school Spanish, but don't worry, we've got you covered with the translation.
Q.
Right? So this source really gets to the heart of what it means to heal those old wounds, and it presents this really interesting idea.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
So they say that to live a truly fulfilling life, we need two fundamental things established in our childhood.
Two fundamental needs. Now, you've piqued my interest. What are they?
Well, the first one is all about feeling truly loved for who you are, not for your accomplishments or how well behaved you are. It's about that unconditional love.
That makes sense. We all crave that feeling of being accepted for simply being ourselves,
Yeah.
not for what we do or don't do.
Exactly. And the source points out how damaging it can be when that unconditional love is absent, especially in childhood. Imagine being told, even indirectly, I'll only be happy with you IF.
Oof, yeah. That kind of conditional love can really sting, even as adults looking back.
Right. It's like being told your worth conditional, not inherent. I can see how that could be a setup for a wounded inner child.
100%. And the source goes on to explain how that lack of unconditional love can lead to this feeling of never being good enough, which sadly can follow us into adulthood.
It's like a blueprint for self-doubt that gets imprinted early on.
Sadly, yes. And this takes us to the second essential need, developing a sense of self-sufficiency, even from a young age.
Interesting. So it's not just about feeling loved, but also feeling capable.
You got it. It's about having that sense of agency, trusting your own abilities to navigate the world. And I think sometimes this gets misinterpreted. It's not about pushing kids to be totally independent right out of the gate.
Right. It's not about throwing them into the deep end and saying swim.
Exactly. It's more about fostering an environment where they're empowered to explore, to try new things, and yes, even to mess up a little, but all within a supportive and encouraging environment, of course.
Because even those small victories can be huge for building confidence.
Absolutely. The source really emphasizes that fostering self-sufficiency isn't about pushing kids towards some unrealistic ideal of independence. It's about those little wins, those "I can do this" moments that help them build a strong foundation for life.
It's giving them the tools and the encouragement to trust themselves.
Exactly. But here's where things get really fascinating. You ready for this?
Hit me with it.
So the source connects these two fundamental needs, the unconditional love and self-sufficiency, to how our brains actually work, specifically the left and right hemispheres.
Okay, a little brain science. I am here for it. Tell me more about this left brain, right brain connection. All right, so let's get into these different parts of the brain. How does it all connect to these needs we were just talking about?
Well, you can think of your brain like this. Your left brain, that's the logical, analytical side, the one that loves facts, figures, solving problems, all that good stuff.
The left brain is all about show me the data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you have your right brain, and the right brain is all about emotions, creativity, intuition.
So it's like the left brain wants to organize the world and the right brain wants to experience it.
Exactly. And ideally, they work together. It's like a beautiful dance. They complement each other.
Okay, that makes sense. But I have a feeling we're about to talk about when that dance isn't so beautiful, especially when we're talking about the wounded inner child, right?
You hit the nail on the head. The source suggests that when those childhood needs, like the unconditional love and the chances to become self-sufficient, when those aren't fully met, it can actually create a rift between those two hemispheres.
So instead of working together, they're kind of at odds with each other.
That's a really good way to put it. The source even uses the phrase, the left brain is blind to the right brain's experiences. It's like that logical side is trying to explain away or just completely suppress that emotional pain from those early experiences.
Wow. It's almost like your head and your heart are speaking different languages.
Yes. It creates this inner conflict, like when you kind of understand something in your head, but emotionally it still doesn't feel right.
Oh, totally. That disconnect. I've been there. And speaking of disconnects, I think the source mentions something about this potentially leading to self-sabotage.
It did, and this part is really fascinating to me. The audiobook highlights this paradox. Adults who maybe haven't fully experienced unconditional love sometimes subconsciously sabotage their own success.
So even if they don't realize it, they might end up getting in their own way.
Exactly. Because deep down, there's this part of them that doesn't truly believe that they deserve happiness
Hmm.
or success. And so they unconsciously create obstacles even when things seem to be going well.
It's almost like they can't let themselves be happy or successful because it goes against everything they've internalized about their worthiness.
You've got it.
Yeah,
And that's a really tough cycle to break. So the question becomes, what can we do about it?
right. How do we start to bridge that gap between our logical side and our emotional side? And maybe even start to heal that wounded inner child.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And luckily, the source does offer a few different approaches.
Okay, I am ready to hear about them. Lay them on me.
Well, one of the simplest but most powerful, in my opinion, is just the act of acknowledging those wounds, those old hurts we carry around.
Acknowledging them. So just admitting they're there, is that all it takes?
Well, no, it's not magic. Think of it as a first step. Acknowledgement is huge because it creates that safe space for those feelings to surface without judgment. But then we can start to look at those early experiences through the lens of our adult selves.
You mean with all the wisdom and compassion we've hopefully gained since then?
Exactly. It's like having a conversation with that younger version of yourself and offering comfort, understanding. And the source makes a really important point here. This is not about placing blame on parents or caregivers.
It's not about pointing fingers.
No. Because often those caregivers were doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. It's more about understanding.
Understanding the context. Not necessarily condoning it, but getting a clearer picture of how those early dynamics might have played a role.
Right. And speaking of understanding, I think it's a good time to bring back that amazing metaphor from the audiobook about the ocean and the waves.
Oh, right. The ocean and waves. That one really stuck with me, too. What was it again?
It's such a beautiful image.
Yeah.
Imagine the vastness of the ocean.
Okay, yeah.
So that represents the eternal, this
Yeah.
continuous life force that just flows through everything.
Right.
And then you have the waves. Each wave is like an individual life, rising and falling on the surface of the ocean.
Each of us just riding those waves of experience.
Yes. And what the source really wanted to drive home is that even though each wave might seem like it's separate, it's always a part of something much larger.
There's that connection, right, to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
So are you saying that tapping into that sense of connection, that feeling of being part of something larger, could that help us heal some of those old wounds?
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Because when you start to recognize that you're part of something bigger, that you belong, it can bring a sense of peace, acceptance, even to those parts of ourselves that feel, wounded or broken.
Like those little individual stories we all carry around with all the ups and downs are all ultimately a part of something much bigger.
You said it perfectly. It's about embracing the fullness of your experience, the good, the bad, those wounded parts, and having compassion for yourself through it all.
This has been such a fascinating conversation, really makes you think. But before we wrap up, I have one more question.
Okay, shoot.
So let's say someone is listening to this and thinking, okay, this really resonates with me. I think I might need to do some inner child work.
Right.
What would be a good first step? Where do they even begin?
Well, I actually love what the source suggests here. They talk about the power of creative expression.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Like, are we talking about painting,
It
writing?
could be any of that. It could even be dancing around your living room. Anything goes. It doesn't have to be fancy or good. The key is to just tap into that playful, expressive energy that we all had as kids.
Just give ourselves permission to play again.
Exactly. Remember how easily kids get lost in their imaginations. They don't censor themselves or worry about what other people think. So reconnecting with that energy, however it feels right for you, that can be a really powerful way to heal.
It's like giving that inner child a voice, a way to express themselves authentically.
Yes. And you never know what you might discover about yourself in the process. Hidden talents, new insights, it's all there, waiting to be uncovered.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive. Thank you so much. I feel like I have a lot to think about. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as we wrap up?
Just this. Healing is a journey, not a destination. It takes time. Just remember to be kind to yourself along the way and to remember that you're not alone.
So well said. We're all just works in progress, right?
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What if you used your own form of creative expression, however that looks to you, as a way to connect with your inner child? You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself and your own path to healing. Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.